December 4th, 1872, the Atlantic Ocean. A British ship spotted something strange on the horizon. A vessel drifting aimlessly through the waves, sails torn and flapping in the wind, no one at the helm. As they drew closer, the captain realized something was terribly wrong. The ship was the Mary Celeste, and it was completely abandoned. No crew, no passengers, no sign of struggle. But here's what made this different from every other ghost ship story. The cargo was untouched. The ship was seaworthy. Food and water were plentiful. Personal belongings were still in place. It was as if the crew had simply vanished into thin air. This is the story of the greatest maritime mystery in history, a mystery that has never been solved. The Mary Celeste was a merchant brigantine, 103 feet long, built in Nova Scotia in 1861. Originally named the Amazon, the ship had a troubled history from the start. Her first captain died during her maiden voyage. She collided with fishing equipment, ran aground, caught fire during repairs. Sailors began calling her cursed. In 1868, she was salvaged and renamed the Mary Celeste. New owners, new captain, a chance to start fresh. By 1872, she was under the command of Captain Benjamin Briggs, an experienced seaman, a devout Christian, a family man respected by everyone who knew him. Captain Briggs was 37 years old. He had spent most of his life at sea. He knew ships. He knew the ocean. He knew how to handle a crew. This voyage should have been routine. On November 7th, 1872, the Mary Celeste departed from New York Harbor. Destination, Genoa, Italy. The cargo hold was filled with 1,701 barrels of commercial alcohol. Denatured alcohol meant for fortifying wine. Captain Briggs brought his wife Sarah with him, and their 2-year-old daughter Sophia. It was common for captains to bring their families on longer voyages. His 4-year-old son Arthur stayed behind, too young for the dangerous Atlantic crossing. The crew consisted of 7 experienced sailors. First mate Albert Richardson, second mate Andrew Gilling, 4 able seamen, and a cook. 10 people in total, all of them about to disappear. The Mary Celeste was well stocked. Enough food for 6 months. Fresh water, medical supplies, navigation equipment, everything a ship needed for the Atlantic crossing. Captain Briggs was thorough, cautious. He inspected every detail before departure. Before leaving New York, he wrote to his mother. The letter was optimistic. He mentioned the ship was in good condition. The weather was fair. He expected to make excellent time. That letter would be one of the last traces of Benjamin Briggs. The Mary Celeste sailed out of New York Harbor on a clear autumn day. The crew was experienced. The ship was sound. The voyage should have taken about 3 weeks. Everything seemed perfect. 10 days later, another ship left New York, the Dei Gratia, captained by David Morehouse, a friend of Captain Briggs. The 2 captains had dined together the night before. The Mary Celeste departed. They discussed their routes, shared stories, made plans to meet in Genoa. Captain Morehouse would never see his friend again. For nearly a month, the Mary Celeste sailed across the Atlantic. We don't know what happened during those weeks. The ship's daily log was found later, but it ended abruptly on November 25th. The final entry was routine. Weather observations, position coordinates, standard nautical notes. Nothing unusual, nothing that suggested danger. After November 25th silence, on December 4th, 1872, the Dei Gratia was sailing about 400 miles east of the Azores. The weather was rough but manageable. Captain Morehouse was on deck when he spotted a ship in the distance. Something about it looked wrong. The ship was moving erratically, zigzagging through the waves. Some sails were set, others were furled. No one appeared to be steering. Captain Morehouse studied the vessel through his telescope. He recognized the shape, the configuration. It was the Mary Celeste, his friend's ship. But why was she sailing like that? Where was Captain Briggs? Morehouse tried to hail the ship. No response. He fired signal guns. Nothing. The Mary Celeste continued her aimless drift. Something was very wrong. Captain Morehouse made a decision. He would send a boarding party. His first mate, Oliver DeVoe, volunteered along with 2 crew members. They lowered a small boat and rowed toward the Mary Celeste. As they approached, they noticed the ship's condition. The sails were damaged, some torn, some missing entirely. The rigging was in disarray, but the ship was still afloat, still seaworthy. DeVoe climbed aboard first, he called out. His voice echoed across the empty deck. No answer. The ship was deserted. DeVoe searched the deck. The wheel was unmanned, spinning freely. Ropes hung loose. Water sloshed around the deck, about 3 feet deep in some places. But the ship wasn't sinking. The hull was intact. He moved to the captain's cabin. The door was open. Inside, he found Captain Briggs' belongings. His clothes hanging neatly, his navigation instruments in place, his logbook open on the desk. The last entry, November 25th, 9 days earlier. But there was no sign of Captain Briggs, no sign of his wife, no sign of their daughter. DeVoe checked the crew quarters. Bunks made, personal items still there, a half-eaten breakfast on a table. It was as if everyone had left in the middle of a meal. He searched the entire ship. Cargo hold, galley, storage rooms. No one. 10 people had simply vanished. But here's what made it even stranger. The cargo was intact. All 701 barrels of alcohol were still secured in the hold. 9 barrels were found empty, but that was likely from natural evaporation during the voyage. Nothing had been stolen. The ship's stores were well stocked. 6 months of food remaining. Fresh water in the barrels. The galley was organized and clean. Even stranger, there were valuable items left behind. Captain Briggs's navigational instruments, a sextant worth considerable money, personal jewelry belonging to his wife. If pirates had attacked, they would have taken these items. The ship's lifeboat was missing. That was the only thing unaccounted for. It appeared the crew had abandoned ship. But why? The Mary Celeste was seaworthy. She wasn't sinking. She had food, water, and supplies. The weather, while rough, wasn't catastrophic. What could have made 10 experienced sailors abandon a perfectly good ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean? DeVoe found the ship's log and examined it carefully. The entries were normal. Weather notes, position updates, routine observations. Nothing about illness, nothing about damage, nothing about danger. The log simply stopped. Oliver DeVoe continued his investigation of the abandoned Mary Celeste. Every detail he found only deepened the mystery. The ship's compass was destroyed, smashed, as if someone had struck it deliberately. The binnacle, the housing that held the compass, was displaced. Why would anyone destroy their own navigation equipment? In the captain's cabin, DeVoe found more peculiar details. The bed was unmade, not unusual for a ship at sea. But a small indentation suggested someone had been lying there recently. Captain Briggs's sword was found under the bed, still in its sheath, unused. If there had been a fight, wouldn't the captain have drawn his weapon? The ship's papers were missing. Not all of them, but important documents. The captain's log was there, but the daily log slate was gone. Some navigational charts were missing. These were documents a captain would take if abandoning ship. Documents needed to prove identity and cargo at the next port. It suggested a deliberate, if hasty, evacuation. DeVoe examined the cargo hold more carefully. The hatches had been opened, not forced open, simply opened. Someone had gone down to check the cargo recently. The barrels of alcohol were secure, but the empty space where 9 barrels had evaporated created fumes. Strong, potent fumes that could cause dizziness or confusion. Could the crew have panicked over these fumes? The galley showed signs of recent use. Pots and pans were clean. Food was stored properly. There was even a prepared meal that appeared to have been interrupted. Bread still fresh enough to eat. Preserved meats. Coffee in the pot, though cold now. It was as if the crew had been about to eat breakfast when something happened. Something that made them leave immediately. But what? DeVoe checked the hull for damage. He found none. No holes, no cracks. No signs of collision or grounding. The pumps were working. He tested them himself. The ship had taken on some water through the open hatches and damaged rigging, but nothing serious. With minimal effort, the Mary Celeste could be sailed safely. The rigging told its own strange story. Some sails were properly set. Others were torn or missing. The foresail and upper foretopsail were gone entirely. The lower foretopsail was hanging by a corner, torn and useless. But here's the strange part. The damage wasn't consistent with a storm. It looked deliberate, as if someone had cut the sails loose in a hurry. Why? The ship's boat was definitely missing. The davits the cranes used to lower boats were still in place, but the ropes had been cut. Not untied, cut. Again, this suggested urgency. Panic even. The crew had abandoned ship in such a hurry they didn't have time to properly lower the lifeboat. They cut it loose and jumped in. But the question remained, why? DeVoe examined the deck more carefully. He found a deep groove carved into the wood near the bow. It looked like it had been made by a sharp object. An axe, perhaps. There were also strange marks on the railing, scratches, indentations. What had happened on this deck? The more DeVoe searched, the more confused he became. Every piece of evidence contradicted the next. The ship was seaworthy, but the crew had fled. The cargo was valuable, but nothing was stolen. The captain was experienced, but he'd made the fatal decision to abandon ship. None of it made sense. After 3 hours of searching, DeVoe returned to the Dei Gratia. He reported his findings to Captain Morehouse. Both men were baffled. They faced a decision. The Mary Celeste was a derelict vessel. Under maritime law, the Dei Gratia crew could claim salvage rights. They could sail the abandoned ship to port and receive a substantial reward. But it would require splitting their crew. 3 men would need to sail the Mary Celeste while the rest continued on the Dei Gratia. It was risky. They were still hundreds of miles from land. The weather was unpredictable, and the Mary Celeste clearly had some kind of curse hanging over her. Captain Morehouse made his decision. They would claim salvage. DeVoe volunteered to captain the Mary Celeste to Gibraltar. 2 other crew members joined him. It was a skeleton crew for a ship that size, but they were all experienced sailors. On December 4th, both ships set sail. The Dei Gratia leading, the Mary Celeste following. The journey took 9 days. During those 9 days, the 3 men sailing the Mary Celeste experienced strange occurrences. Unexplained noises below deck. The feeling of being watched. Equipment moving on its own. Or so they later claimed. Were these real phenomena? Or just the nervous imaginations of men sailing a ship where 10 people had mysteriously vanished? We'll never know. On December 13th, both ships arrived in Gibraltar. Captain Morehouse immediately reported the abandoned vessel to the authorities. The British Vice Admiralty Court opened an investigation. Frederick Solly Flood, the Attorney General of Gibraltar, took charge. He was skeptical from the start. Too skeptical, perhaps. Flood didn't believe the Mary Celeste had been abandoned. He suspected foul play, murder, mutiny, insurance fraud. He believed Captain Morehouse and his crew had killed everyone aboard. The Mary Celeste and concocted the abandonment story to claim salvage rights. It was a serious accusation, one that could lead to murder charges. The court conducted a thorough investigation. They examined every inch of the Mary Celeste. They interviewed the Dei Gratia crew extensively. They analyzed the cargo, the ship's log, the physical evidence. Flood was convinced he would find proof of violence. He focused on stains found in the captain's cabin and on the deck, dark brown stains that he insisted were blood. He had the stains analyzed. The results came back. Not blood, rust and oxidation from metal fittings. Flood wasn't satisfied. He had the stains analyzed again by different experts. Same result, not blood. He then focused on marks found on the ship's railing, cuts and scratches that he claimed were from swords during a fight. The naval surveyors examined the marks. Their conclusion? Weather damage and normal wear from ropes and equipment. No evidence of violence. Flood's investigation continued for 3 months. He questioned every detail, every discrepancy, every possible explanation. He found nothing. No evidence of murder. No evidence of mutiny. No evidence of piracy or theft. The Mary Celeste showed no signs of violence whatsoever. Reluctantly, The court concluded that the ship had indeed been abandoned voluntarily. For reasons unknown, Captain Morehouse and his crew were awarded salvage rights. Though the amount was far less than expected, the court, still suspicious, awarded them only 1/6 of the ship's value. They had expected 1/2 the standard salvage rate. The Mary Celeste was repaired and returned to service. She sailed for another 12 years under different owners. But her reputation was ruined. She was known as the ghost ship, the cursed ship, the ship where 10 people vanished without a trace. Sailors refused to crew her. Owners struggled to find anyone willing to sail on her. In 1885, her final captain deliberately ran her aground on a reef off Haiti, an insurance fraud scheme. The plan failed and he was charged. The Mary Celeste was left to rot. She broke apart on the reef, battered by waves and weather. By 1886, she was gone, reduced to scattered timbers and memories. But the mystery of what happened to her crew remained, and remains to this day. For over 150 years, investigators, historians, and amateur detectives have tried to solve the mystery of the Mary Celeste. Hundreds of theories have been proposed, some plausible, some absurd, none proven. Let's examine the most credible explanations. Theory 1, piracy. The most obvious explanation. Pirates attacked the ship, killed the crew, and threw the bodies overboard. But this theory has major problems. Nothing was stolen. The cargo of commercial alcohol was valuable. The captain's instruments were worth good money. Even small personal items had value. Pirates don't attack a ship and leave empty-handed. Additionally, there were no signs of struggle. No blood, no damage from weapons, no evidence of forced entry. If pirates had attacked, there would be evidence. This theory is almost universally dismissed. Theory 2, mutiny. Perhaps the crew mutinied against Captain Briggs, killed him, his family, and the loyal officers, then fled in the lifeboat. But again, there are problems. Captain Briggs was known as a fair, respected commander. He had a good relationship with his crew. There were no reports of tension or conflict before the voyage. The crew members were all experienced professional sailors, not the type to suddenly commit murder. And if they had mutinied, why abandon a ship full of food, water, and valuable cargo? Why flee in a small lifeboat with limited supplies? It makes no sense. This theory is also largely discounted. Theory 3, alcohol fumes. This is one of the more plausible explanations. The cargo was 1,701 barrels of commercial alcohol. Denatured alcohol is highly flammable and produces toxic fumes. 9 barrels were found empty. Natural evaporation would cause this over time, but it would also fill the cargo hold with dangerous fumes. If a crew member went below to check the cargo and detected strong fumes, they might panic. Alcohol fumes in an enclosed space could explode if ignited by a lantern or spark. Captain Briggs might have ordered an immediate evacuation. Get everyone off the ship before an explosion occurred. They would have taken the lifeboat, planning to wait at a safe distance. Once they determined there was no danger, they would return. But here's where the theory gets darker. If they evacuated into the lifeboat, they would need to tie a rope to the Mary Celeste. Otherwise, the ship would drift away. Perhaps the rope broke, or perhaps it wasn't secured properly in the chaos. The Mary Celeste would sail away, powered by the wind. The lifeboat, with 10 people aboard, would be left behind, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, hundreds of miles from land. They would have no chance of survival. This theory explains the missing lifeboat, the hasty abandonment, the opened cargo hatches, even the cut ropes. It's one of the most accepted theories among maritime historians, but it's never been proven. Theory 4, seaquake or waterspout. An underwater earthquake, called a seaquake, can create violent vibrations through a ship. It feels like the ship is breaking apart, even when it's not. A terrified crew might abandon ship, believing it's sinking. Waterspouts, tornado-like formations over water, can also create sudden, violent weather conditions that seem catastrophic. Again, a crew might evacuate in panic, but experienced sailors like Captain Briggs would know how to assess actual damage. They wouldn't abandon a sound ship without checking the hull. This theory is possible, but unlikely. Theory 5. A rogue wave. A massive wave could have swept across the deck, washing the crew overboard. But this doesn't explain why the captain, his wife, and daughter would all be on deck at the same time. Normally, they would be in the cabin. It also doesn't explain the missing lifeboat. And if a wave large enough to sweep away 10 people had hit the ship, there would be more damage. Broken equipment, displaced cargo. The Mary Celeste was mostly intact. This theory doesn't hold up. Theory 6, murder-suicide by Captain Briggs. Some have suggested Captain Briggs went mad, killed his family and crew, then either killed himself or fled in the lifeboat to die at sea. This is based on nothing but speculation. There's no evidence Captain Briggs was unstable. His letters home were normal and cheerful. His reputation was spotless. This theory is deeply offensive to his descendants and has been thoroughly rejected. Theory 7. Attack by giant squid. Yes, this theory actually exists. In the 19th century, sailors feared giant squid. Stories of massive tentacles dragging men overboard were common. Could a giant squid have attacked the Mary Celeste? No. There would be evidence. Tentacle marks on the deck. Damage to the ship. Some sign of struggle. This theory belongs in fiction, not serious investigation. Theory 8. Sea monster. Another fantastical theory. A sea monster emerged from the depths and terrified the crew into abandoning ship. Again, no evidence, no credibility. This theory is mentioned only because it appeared in several Victorian-era newspaper articles. Sensationalism sold papers then, just as it does now. Theory 9. Deliberate hoax. Some believe Captain Morehouse and Captain Briggs conspired to stage an abandonment. Briggs would hide with his crew somewhere. Morehouse would discover the abandoned ship and claim salvage. They would split the money. This theory requires Briggs to kill or hide his wife and daughter, to sacrifice his reputation, to commit fraud. For what? A salvage payment that would be split among multiple crew members and owners. The financial gain wouldn't be worth the risk or the moral compromise. This theory is rejected by serious researchers. Theory 10. Combination of factors. The most likely explanation is that multiple factors combined to create the perfect disaster. Alcohol fumes created a perceived danger. Rough weather made the situation more frightening. A waterspout or sudden squall added to the panic. Captain Briggs, out of caution, ordered everyone into the lifeboat. They intended to stay close until the danger passed, but the rope broke. Or the weather worsened, or the Mary Celeste sailed faster than expected. The ship escaped. The lifeboat was left behind. 10 people died in the Atlantic. Their bodies never recovered. The Mary Celeste sailed on, ghost-like, until the Dei Gratia found her. This combination theory is supported by many experts. It explains most of the evidence. It accounts for the logical decisions that became tragic mistakes. But like every other theory, it can't be proven. We simply don't know what happened on November 25th, 1872, and we likely never will. The mystery of the Mary Celeste didn't end when the ship was found. In many ways, it was just beginning. The discovery captured public imagination. Newspapers around the world published sensational stories, each more dramatic than the last. Some claimed the crew had been eaten by sharks. Others suggested alien abduction. A few even proposed that the ship had passed through a portal to another dimension. The truth, whatever it was, became buried under layers of speculation and fiction. One of the most influential fictional accounts came from an unexpected source, a young medical student named Arthur Conan Doyle. Yes, the future creator of Sherlock Holmes. In 1884, 12 years after the Mary Celeste was found, Doyle published a short story. He called it J. Habakkuk Jeffson's Statement. In his story, Doyle renamed the ship the Mary Celeste. He added fictional details, invented characters, created a dramatic conspiracy involving murder and revenge. The story was published anonymously. Many readers believed it was a true account. Doyle's fiction became confused with fact. Details from his story were repeated as real. The wrong name, Mary Celeste, is still commonly used today. The real story was strange enough, but fiction made it legendary. The families of the missing crew members suffered terribly. No bodies were ever found, no confirmation of death, no closure. Captain Briggs' son Arthur, who had stayed home during the voyage, grew up without his father, mother, or sister. He spent his life wondering what happened to them. Sarah Briggs' family pressed for continued investigation. They wanted answers. They wanted their daughter's body recovered for proper burial. Neither wish was granted. The crew members' families faced similar anguish. Wives became widows without confirmation. Children grew up fatherless. Parents lost sons without ever knowing how or why. The legal designation of missing at sea meant years of uncertainty before death certificates could be issued. Insurance payments were delayed. Inheritances were frozen. Families struggled financially and emotionally. The Mary Celeste herself continued sailing. Despite her dark reputation, she was too valuable to scrap. New owners purchased her in 1873. They renamed her, changed her appearance, tried to distance her from the mystery. It didn't work. Sailors knew, the shipping community knew. She was the ghost ship, the cursed vessel, the ship where 10 people vanished. Crews demanded higher wages to sail on her. Some refused entirely regardless of pay. She changed hands multiple times over the next decade. Each owner struggled to keep her profitable. By 1884, she was in terrible condition. Years of neglect, minimal maintenance, desperate owners cutting costs. Her final captain was a man named Gilman Parker, a man with significant debts and few scruples. Parker devised a plan. He would deliberately wreck the Mary Celeste, and they determined that alcohol fumes could indeed create an explosive atmosphere. But without an ignition source, an actual explosion wouldn't occur. However, the fumes could create a sudden whoosh of air rushing out of the hold if the hatches were opened. This could sound and feel like an explosion. A crew might panic and abandon ship, believing an explosion was imminent. This supports the alcohol fumes theory, but it still doesn't prove it. In 2007, researchers analyzed historical weather data from December 1872. They found evidence of unusual storm activity in the area where the Mary Celeste was found. A combination of a waterspout and sudden, violent weather could have created confusion and panic. Again, supportive of existing theories, but not proof. The most recent major investigation was in 2014. Using modern maritime accident analysis techniques, a team of experts examined every detail of the case. Their conclusion? The most likely explanation is an alcohol fume scare combined with panic and bad decision-making. But they admitted this is speculation based on probability, not fact based on evidence. 150 years later, we still don't know for certain what happened. The families of the crew members have mostly accepted they will never know. Descendants of Captain Briggs still exist. They've made peace with the uncertainty, but they keep his memory alive. They maintain family records. They preserve his letters and personal effects. They want the world to remember Benjamin Briggs as a good man, a loving father and husband, a skilled captain, not just as a character in a mystery. The Mary Celeste has become more than a historical event. She's become a cultural phenomenon. She's been featured in countless books, movies, TV shows, and documentaries. She's inspired works of fiction across every medium. Arthur Conan Doyle's story was just the beginning. Hundreds of authors have written their own versions of what happened. Some are serious attempts at solving the mystery. Others are pure fantasy. The ship has appeared in horror movies as a ghost ship crewed by the undead, in science fiction as a portal to other dimensions, in conspiracy theories as evidence of government cover-ups. She's become a symbol, a metaphor for the unknowable, or the questions that have no answers. But behind the legend were real people. 10 souls who left New York Harbor in November 1872 and never came home. A captain who just wanted to complete one more voyage before retiring. A wife who joined her husband to share the adventure. A 2-year-old girl who would never grow up. 7 crew members who are just doing their jobs. They deserve to be remembered as more than a mystery. The Mary Celeste mystery has endured for over 150 years. It remains one of the greatest unsolved maritime mysteries in history. But why? Why has this particular case captured imaginations for so long? Part of it is the perfect strangeness of the details. An abandoned ship that wasn't damaged, cargo intact, food on the table, but everyone gone. It's like a stage set, everything in place for a play that suddenly stopped mid-scene. Our brains seek patterns. We need explanations. A mystery this complete, this lacking in clear answers, frustrates and fascinates us. We can't let it go because there should be an answer. Someone must know what happened, but no one does. Another reason for the enduring fascination is the human element. These weren't anonymous victims. We know their names, their ages, their relationships. Captain Benjamin Briggs, 37, a man described as intelligent, calm, and competent. Sarah Briggs, 32, a woman who loved her husband enough to join him at sea despite the dangers. Sophia Matilda Briggs, 2 years old, a little girl who was just beginning her life. Albert Richardson, 28, first mate, engaged to be married. Andrew Gilling, 25, second mate, supporting his family back home. Edward Head, 23, seaman. Volkert Lawrence, 29 seaman. Arian Martins, 35, seaman. Boiler Ensign, 23, seaman and cousin to Volkert. Edward Goodshall, 23, seaman. These weren't just statistics. They were people with hopes, dreams, and families waiting for them. Their disappearance affected dozens of other lives. Parents who lost children, children who lost parents, fiancés who lost futures. The human cost of the mystery makes it more than just an intellectual puzzle. The Mary Celeste has also become a cautionary tale in maritime circles, a reminder that the ocean is unpredictable, that even experienced sailors with sound ships can meet unexpected disasters. Safety protocols in modern shipping were influenced in part by cases like this. Requirements for emergency communications, regulations about lifeboat procedures, standards for cargo handling. If alcohol fumes were indeed the cause, modern ventilation systems in cargo holds might have prevented the tragedy. If panic was the cause, better training in crisis management might have saved lives. The mystery taught maritime industries to prepare for the unexpected, to have protocols for situations that seem impossible. In that sense, the loss of the Mary Celeste crew may have saved future lives. The case has also influenced how we think about evidence and investigation. It's studied in criminal justice courses as an example of a case with physical evidence, but no clear conclusion. It's used in logic and reasoning. Courses to teach about the limitations of deductive reasoning. You can have all the facts and still not reach certainty. It reminds us that some questions don't have answers. Some mysteries remain mysterious. That's uncomfortable in our modern world. We're used to answers being available. Internet searches solve most questions in seconds, but the Mary Celeste defies our expectations. No amount of research or technology has solved it. Maybe that's okay. Maybe some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. The physical location of the crew's fate is unknown. Their bodies were never recovered. There's no grave to visit, no memorial to mark their passing. In 2001, a plaque was placed in Marion, Massachusetts, where the Briggs family lived. It commemorates Captain Benjamin Briggs and his family. It's a small recognition, but it ensures they're not forgotten. Other memorials have been proposed over the years. A monument at the site where the Mary Celeste was found. A museum exhibit dedicated to the crew. None have been completed. The mystery overshadows the people. Perhaps that needs to change. The wreck of the Mary Celeste, destroyed on the reef off Haiti, was never formally documented. The location is known approximately, but the scattered remains have long since been absorbed by the ocean. There's nothing left to find, nothing left to analyze. The ship is gone. The crew is gone. Even the physical evidence has largely disappeared. All that remains are the records. The testimony given in Gibraltar, the ship's log, the letters Captain Briggs sent home. These documents have been analyzed thousands of times by professional investigators, by historians, by amateur detectives convinced they've found the answer. No one has. Every few years, someone proposes a new theory, new analysis of old evidence, a fresh perspective on the known facts. Sometimes these new theories are interesting. Sometimes they reveal details previously overlooked, but none have been conclusive. The Mary Celeste will likely remain unsolved. Future technology might offer new analytical methods, but without physical evidence to analyze, even the most advanced techniques will have nothing to work with. The answer, if it exists, is at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, lost forever in the place, where 10 people met their end. So what do we take away from this mystery? Perhaps it's a reminder of human vulnerability, that despite our technology and knowledge, nature and circumstance can still overwhelm us. Perhaps it's a lesson in humility, that we don't have all the answers, that uncertainty is part of existence. Or perhaps it's simply a story, a tragic, mysterious, unsolvable story about 10 people who sailed into the unknown and never returned. Their disappearance created a legend, a mystery that has outlived everyone who knew them. That has transcended the actual events and become something larger. The Mary Celeste is now immortal. As long as people are curious, as long as we seek answers to unanswerable questions, this story will be told. Captain Benjamin Briggs and his crew have achieved a strange kind of fame. Not the fame they sought, not the successful voyage and safe return they hoped for. But they're remembered, their names are known, their story is told. In a way, they did complete their voyage, just not in the way anyone expected. They sailed into mystery, and they remain there still. The Mary Celeste mystery reminds us that the ocean keeps its secrets, that some disappearances have no explanation, that sometimes people simply vanish. And we're left with questions that echo across 150 years. What happened on November 25th, 1872? What did the crew see or experience that made them abandon their ship? Did they die quickly, or did they suffer for days in that small lifeboat? Did they realize their mistake as the Mary Celeste sailed away? Did they call out hoping to be heard? Did they watch their ship disappear over the horizon, knowing they would never see land again? We'll never know, and perhaps that's the most haunting part of all. 10 people, one ship, an endless ocean, and silence. If this mystery has fascinated you, if you want to hear more unsolved disappearances and unexplained events from history, hit that subscribe button. There are more stories waiting to be told, more mysteries that have never been solved, more questions that history refuses to answer. The Mary Celeste is just one of hundreds of ships that vanished at sea, one of thousands of disappearances that defy explanation. What do you think happened to the Mary Celeste crew? Do you believe it was alcohol fumes? A freak weather event? Something else entirely? Let me know in the comments below. Maybe together we can solve a 150-year-old mystery. Or maybe, like so many before us, we'll just add to the speculation. Either way, the story endures. The Mary Celeste sails on through history, a ghost ship forever drifting through our collective imagination. And Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife Sarah, their daughter Sophia, and the 7 crew members remain where they've always been, lost at sea forever. Until next time, remember this: the ocean is vast, the mysteries are endless, and some questions are never meant to be answered. Stay curious, stay questioning, and never stop searching for truth, even when truth refuses to be found.